One. We are live. Hey, everybody. This is episode 6, I think. Nicole, is that right? Episode 6.
Yes, it is.
And we are blessed. This is our first interview that we're having with musicians in New Orleans. We are blessed to have Matt Perrine and Craig Klein of the New Orleans Nightcrawlers. Thank you guys for coming in.
You're welcome. Hey, were we not
Hello.
prompt? We were prompt, right? We were on time, right?
You
Totally.
were early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, just want to say, musicians not always late. Just want to put that out there.
You're right before that.
Well, I wasn't early. I was right on time. I have the more of the New Orleans kind. I was like almost tending to be behind time, New Orleans time, but I jumped in there right at the last moment of time.
You're here. That's all that counts. Let's get started. So talk to us about how the Nightcrawlers started way back when. Tell us when they started, how they started, and talk about a little bit about the early years.
It was really at Craig's house, so I think he should answer this question.
Okay. Well, I lived in Araby at the time. That was 1996-ish or so, right, Matt? Somewhere around there. And Matt called me and said, "Hey, Tom McDermott wrote these arrangements for the Dirty Dozen, and he wants to hear them played live." And something within that, are you interested in getting together and reading through some charts? Absolutely, because at that time I had been playing in the Storyville Stompers, so brass bands was in my blood. I loved it, and another way to get into a new brass band that was playing original music, I was very interested in that idea. So that was the idea. It was just a writer's workshop. Matt started writing songs immediately, brought a lot of songs in. We met at my house and just had a big music room in the back. And we just started reading these arrangements for fun. It was just our own time, our own fun time.
Yeah, and the reason why we did it at Craig's house is because he was the only person who owned a house. The rest of us were all musicians in apartments. We were like in our 20s, so we were all in these little tiny places, and so Craig was a little ahead of us on that front, But that's how long we've been a band. Is that we were a band back when we were all living in apartments and had girlfriends and gigs we didn't like, and we're all just struggling to do something artistic. Now we get together and we all are on our second houses or third, and we have kids, and we talk about
second wives, divorces, all kind of thing, grandkids.
The conversation has changed, but we've seen each other through it all.
Did you guys release an album right away, or was it more live performances when you first started?
No, actually, the recording came first. We were getting together and working on this material, and a few tunes started sounding kind of good. So we decided to go into a local club where Craig and I were playing. We were playing at the Maxwell's Toulouse Cabaret in the heart of the French Quarter, with Jimmy Maxwell owned it then. It's since become the Shim Sham, and now I believe it's going to be something else after the pandemic. But it's got a long history. It's a haunted old building where music has been happening for years and years. And so we went in there in the afternoon and recorded a demo of 3 or 4 songs. And then we got that demo to Scott Billington, actually, Tom McDermott. Once again, he got the demo to Scott Billington, who gave us sight unseen. He gave us a 2-record deal.
Nice.
And
Wow.
so just like that, now we had to make a record. So we went back to Toulouse, the Maxwell's Toulouse Cabaret, and recorded the rest of the record. And so that all happened very quickly.
That happened really quickly. And we didn't even have a name at that time. And here's an interesting side note. When we showed up for the session, because we had to go in the morning because they opened the club up later, about, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, Tim Stambaugh from Word of Mouth sets his studio up. The band shows up, and the manager of the club says, "What are y'all doing here this early? Y'all are Nightcrawlers."
Because we were 20-year-old people who go out partying every night.
We played our gigs, then we partied. Or did we party and we party and play our gigs? I can't remember what that would be.
Or the
That's
party
great.
was our gigs. Anyway.
Hey, a lot of them were. And then we started playing shows and gigs. The Maple Leaf was one of our, what was it? The Maple Leaf or Snug Harbor was one of our first.
And Donna's
Donna's. Yep.
right away.
Right away. Yep. And another thing is because the arrangements for the band is always, there's a lot to them. It can be, there's a lot in there, a lot of meat and potatoes in there. So it's hard to memorize a lot of that music. So we would show up with music stands and get somewhat berated by people, journalists and critics of all of this kind of nonsense, showing up with music stands at a brass band gig.
Yeah,
That's great.
it's not, nobody else was doing that in New Orleans, so it really looked strange. And actually it led to we listened to those journalists, and we stopped using music stands, and that actually was one of the things that let the band grow into being what we needed to become. Like, we needed to get off of the page to let the band grow into being something else. So that was actually, critique is not the worst thing in the world,
No.
And that
Well-
same critic has been a fan of ours and been a supporter of ours our whole career. It was never anyone's intention to be mean. It was constructive, and we took it that way.
Tough love, right?
For us, yeah.
So you guys have come a long way. And before we talk about the Grammy, which I can't wait to talk about, tell us a little bit about your relationship with the Threadheads.
Oh man.
Wow. I mean, I was working with Paul Sanchez. I was his bass player, and him and John Butte were the first two artists that kind of inspired the beginning of the Threadheads. And I remember Paul telling me that Chris came to Paul and said, hey, why aren't you guys making records? And Paul said, because we don't have houses. Our lives have been totally disrupted by Hurricane Katrina. And we were not in any position business-wise to think about recording a record. And Chris said to Paul, how much do you need to make a record? And Paul said, well, about this much. And Chris went over, this is all according to Paul Sanchez. Chris went over, talked to a group of his friends, and then came back and said, okay, just like that,
That's pretty much how it happened. Yeah.
That's when the Threadheads became music producers. And for about a year or two, and to a certain extent, it's still, that spirit is still in it. But for at the beginning, it was just, if you were an artist that they particularly wanted to support, they would just give you money to make a record. And that was it. I mean, you were obliged to pay them back, but they also wanted you to pay your rent more than they wanted to get paid back. There was that type of relationship going on. And a whole lot of artists in that first 4 or 5 years got to put out records that were paid for by the good people of the Threadhead organization. So that's the beginning of it. And it's grown up since then. But it's still, that same spirit is there. And they're still helping New Orleans musicians today. They put money into our Nightcrawlers record. We needed some money to help get Atmosphere out. They had it for us. We couldn't have gotten the record out without their help. So
you got a grant from the Threadhead Cultural Foundation, right?
we did. Yeah. So it's all this time, it started just like that. It started just like, some musicians we like need money to make records. Here's some money. Other record labels aren't like that.
No, it was a very unusual thing. My relationship with the Threadheads, you reminded that Threadheads started in 07 and we met in 08 when Paul brought me to the Patry. And I met Paul right after Katrina when his house needed to be gutted. And the Araby Wrecking Crew went over there and we gutted his house, and we became really, really good friends at that moment. And we still are to this day. And Paul brought me into the Threadhead love, and when I think about, when you ask me that question, what's my relationship? It's almost like it feels like a home, you know, it's like friends. Everybody, every Threadhead I feel like a friend. It feels like I'm home when I'm around the Threadheads, and not in a physical sense of home, more abstract sense of home. So a comfort. So the Threadheads are a very comfortable place for me. And I know all of us feel that way. All of us feel that way. It's a very comfortable relationship that we all have with Threadheads. It almost feels like, what would we have done without the Threadheads at that point? You know?
Well, none of us would have been making records. So there's
Right.
that.
It was quite, so the relationship is like, it's trust, it's loving. This is, you know, it's just peace and love, and just, it's a home feeling. It just feels like my family.
Very much appreciate you guys sharing those stories and your thoughts on that. Thank you for that. I want to talk about Atmosphere, the Grammy-winning album. So,
Wow.
Wow, you ready? Matt, you ready?
Let's
You ready?
see the
You ready?
Grammys.
Here we go. Ready?
That is so cool.
Sorry, that's
Yeah.
backward, everybody.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and especially thank you, Threadheads, man. This is, like Matt said, y'all started that ball.
Take us back to talk about how that album came to life.
Yeah, okay. The band hadn't made a record in 10 years. And the reason why is because our process of making a record required everybody to basically clear their calendar for a week to make a record. And our lives at that time, we couldn't do that. Craig and I play in the Nightcrawlers together, and we also play in Bonorama together. And as far as I know, that's the only combination. Like, there's 9 guys in the band with 9 different careers, and we don't play together in any other environment other than the Nightcrawlers. So to try and clear the calendar of 9 musicians like these for a week was impossible. And so that's what kept us from making records. It's like we'd get hot and we'd have fun. We play music together, and it seemed like so much fun. We like, oh man, let's make a record. Okay, let's find a time to do it. And you'd have to book so far into the future that something else would get in the way. It was just impossible. And so we had to figure out a new system. So we recorded the record in a different way. We kind of broke it up and did the record in batches of music that allowed us to not have everybody else in our lives just holding their breaths. You know, we could just get in and get out, you know. And also I felt it was important to try to recreate that feeling of what we had when we started, when we were just friends hanging out together playing music, because we're still friends. We're still playing music together. We just never hang out, you know? So I started cooking for the rehearsals and cooking for the session. Like, every session and every rehearsal, in the middle, we'd stop doing work, we'd put our instruments down, and we'd go hang out together and eat some food. And, you know, there'd be beer there. And I don't think anybody ever drank any, because it's the middle of the day and we all have jobs and things to do, but it was just nice.
And Matt cooks really good too. He cooks good. I'm telling you, he cooks good.
I did
Well,
not
I
know
could have
that.
been
Wow.
cooking anything. That was the important part. But really, it was hanging out together and being friends with each other. You know, that was really an important part of what made this record work. And I feel like that got on the track somehow. Like, it's funny how I've been thinking recently about people's musical intentions and personal intentions, and then the realization of those things in real time. Like, you want the ability to put good feelings and good times and friendship onto wax. That's what I feel like we did with this record. And I think people feel that.
Yeah. And another note to that, the record that we did 10 or 11 years ago, Slither Slice, was completely funded by the Threadheads. You remember that?
Oh,
sure,
good point.
Right. And at that time, the Threadheads were given this money with the idea that if you can pay it back, please do. If you can't, it's okay. And we did pay. The Threadheads gave us 10 grand, and we sold all the records and saved all that money. and pay that money back, and even paid, the deal was if you can pay 10% above that to a charity of your choice. So we gave 1,000 to the Musicians Clinic too. And it felt really good to do that. You know, it really did.
Yeah, that was great.
And then also in what Matt said was, we applied for, when it was before the Atmosphere record, we applied for another grant, which was a $4,000 grant. We got accepted. And that was the ball. We said, okay, now we have to do something, because there's a time limit where you have to do it, right? So that's when Matt really stepped up. I mean, Matt produced this record from beginning till end, you know, courageously. And it takes a lot of courage to corral 9 of us into getting into a room together. It really does. And he did it from start to stop. And that's part of, a big part of the reason why it won a Grammy, because it had that extra little, that atmosphere that Matt had in mind. So
One more quick question before we talk about the Grammy. And I should have asked you this up front. Can you tell us the other 7 band members, who they are, so for the listeners?
sure. The drummers are Kerry Hunter. His nickname is Fat Man. On bass drum is Tannio Hingle. On trumpet is Barney Floyd. Also on trumpet is Kevin Clark. On trombone is Miles Lyons and Craig Klein. On sousaphone is Matt Perrine. And on the saxophones, we have Brent Rose on tenor saxophone. And on tenor saxophone and clarinet, we have Jason Mingledorf.
Thank you.
And just a quick addendum to that. Fat Man, the snare drummer, plays at Preservation Hall. Tannio Hingle is the leader of the New Birth Brass Band. Craig Klein plays at Preservation Hall and is the leader of his own things and plays in Bonorama with me. Miles Lyons is the tuba player in the Youngblood Brass Band, as well as being a trombone player in the 21st Century Brass Band. Kevin Clark is the leader of the Dukes of Dixieland. Barney Floyd is the principal trumpet player at Commander's Palace, and he goes on the road with the New Orleans Jazz
Orchestra.
Thank you. Brent Rose teaches at the University of New Orleans, and Jason Mingledorf teaches at Loyola. So those are the guys we're talking about. That's why it's
impressive.
so hard for us to get together.
I always said it takes, the stars have to line. I mean, the stars have to really line up to get you know.
Yeah, I'm so glad they aligned, because the album is amazing, and I'm so glad that you guys received the recognition that you received. Now, I know that you're not strangers to accolades, right? You get local awards, local nominations, but let's be real. How did it feel to win a Grammy? Take us through it. What were the emotions? All that.
Oh man, I still get a chill feel. I still think of Matt and I standing in front of that computer screen at the Broadside. And when they said it, I get chilled right now. And I just looked at him like I just couldn't believe it, you know?
Yeah.
Thrilling. It was thrilling. I can't deny that. I mean, everybody who ever probably won a Grammy, it's thrilling.
Yeah, I only got it's also anxious. It's very difficult to wait. You know, once you've been nominated, it's very difficult to wait. And they were supposed to announce it in January, and it got postponed till March. 3 months more we had to wait to find out. And you know, for me, you know, there's something I pick up life skills here and there, like we all do. And something I learned from the Taoists is that very often, in fact, most often in life, when you anticipate something, when it finally arrives, it's almost never as good as the anticipation was. When you think about something that's going to happen and you start looking forward to it, what you picture in your mind is almost always better than the actual thing. So I just started accepting that award over and over and over again. I accepted that award dozens of times a day. If I felt any anxiety, I would just stop what I was doing. Ladies and gentlemen, the New Orleans Nightcrawlers, and I would get that award. I just kept accepting it again and again and again, because I knew there was a very good chance I wouldn't get it. But if I didn't get it, I would have already gotten it. If you see what I mean? And that's really the only way I got through it.
Yeah. That's great. I want to ask you, I don't have this on my list of questions. Um, are there any follow-ups planned to Atmosphere?
Yes,
Can you talk about it?
we're in the studio.
Yeah,
got-
we've already gone in for one session already. We've been rehearsing for how long, Matt? Almost immediately.
Yeah, we've been
We
rehearsing.
started
as
talking about
often-
rehearsals immediately.
Mhm. And of course, it's a band full of composers, so people started writing right away. We've got the next 2 records written. We just got to rehearse it and get it on wax, really.
And when do you think the next one will be out, roughly?
Definitely going to have this record out by. I mean, okay, here, how about this? Look for a Jazz Fest release.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, we're shooting for Jazz Fest. You know, we have a lot of work to do between now and then.
Yeah,
It's
that's
possible.
the answer, right?
Yeah.
Like every other New Orleans musician, we're looking for a Jazz Fest release.
But if it's not, it'll be October, maybe November then, you know? It wouldn't, you know.
So speaking of Jazz Fest, what day are you guys playing? And are you also doing any other shows aside from Jazz Fest during that 11-day period?
We are the second Saturday. Is that correct?
That sounds right.
Yeah.
sounds
We
right.
are playing, we're playing a private something on the 9th. What else do we have going on? There's things kind of bubbling around right now. We're kind of still putting things in place right now. There's a few things bubbling.
Got it.
But yeah, at the Jazz Festival the second Saturday.
We're
We will
looking
be
forward
there.
to seeing you there. Yeah, we'll be there. So we already talked a little bit about your projects together. You guys want to spend a few minutes telling us about the myriad other bands that you guys play in?
Sure, you know, there really are a lot of them.
Man, I mean, we could spend the rest of the time talking about that, really.
I mean,
You know,
well, one thing I would like to say is that I just released a solo record I got a grant through the Threadheads. So that was another thing that started this whole ball. It's called Klein, Talkative Horns. It's musical conversations about Lucien Barberin. And the Threadheads actually gave Lucien died in January 2020 of prostate cancer. And the Threadheads had given us a grant to do the record the year before. And we had already started the pre-production. We started getting together and talking about tunes, and Lucien and I were practicing a bit. And then he got sick and he couldn't get done. So I asked the Threadheads, could I make a tribute to Lucien? You guys said, granted that. So that's what I just recently put out. I'm really, really happy with it. It's got a great band of the rhythm section from the Vipers, along with Kevin Lewis and Lucien's nephew, Jerry Anderson Barberin, who plays with Kermit on drums. That's one thing. And then all the other bands, the Storyville Stompers, of course, Matt and I, Bonorama. Matt and I are going to Dubuque, Iowa this Friday.
tomorrow.
Yeah, we're going tomorrow. We're going to be playing. We're going tomorrow. We're playing Friday in Dubuque for an outdoor city kind of sponsored event that was supposed to happen last year. So that's just a couple of the things.
Matt, you want to talk about some of your projects?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happily, I'm still playing with the Tin Men, and I still play with the Panorama Jazz Band. And, I've got some solo things that I'm working on. So yeah, there's definitely things to do outside of the Nightcrawlers.
Right. You guys are busy, which is great. I want to ask you about your biggest influences when it comes to New Orleans musicians, and specifically musicians who are no longer with us. Who has influenced you?
Go ahead, Craig.
Does it have to be musicians we knew personally?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay. Louis Armstrong, absolutely hands down for me. I always say him. I always say Louis Armstrong. He is the guy. He's the beginning and the end of it for me.
It's really amazing because as I was thinking, Chris Joseph, about that question, Louis Armstrong.
Yeah.
Louis Armstrong. And it's not because there haven't been other great musicians, and there are other musicians we can talk about, but Louis Armstrong, his music, what he taught us about being a human being, his ambassadorship, he's really just the full picture. I mean, I think that's the biggest reason why there hasn't been a biopic about him is because what sliver of his life can you talk about in 2 hours? And you're going to leave most of his humanity and the impact he made on the world off the table.
Yeah.
And so I also have to say, I am constantly amazed and surprised and inspired by Louis Armstrong.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Thank you for
Um,
that.
Yeah. Another kind of a big picture question. When did you guys know you wanted to be professional musicians?
I was thinking about this. For me, I can vividly see, I was on my grandmother's carport and I started playing trombone in 4th grade because my Uncle Jerry, who's only 7 years older than I am, I started under him. And I can specifically remember a conversation. A lady came over there. I don't know why, but she was a horn player in the Louisiana Philharmonic. And we were sitting on a carport and my grandfather was telling me, yeah, she plays music and for a living, she gets paid for playing music. And she started talking to me, yeah, you know, if you kind of stick with it, you make it, you practice, you can get paid too. And I can still remember this. My mind went, wow, if I could only play music, I could buy a go-kart.
Man, no, I don't buy you for Christmas this year.
So I actually was able to buy that go-kart.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, I mean, it was actually, it wasn't really, I mean, I didn't start getting paid for playing music until I was 20 years old, you know. So it took a minute for me to get that go-kart. I grew out of the old go-kart and I bought a car instead.
Yeah, I remember I was in junior high school when I realized that I had a knack for music that and an interest in it that I just couldn't seem to get away from it. But I'd never actually met a professional musician. And anyone I spoke to said, oh, don't be a professional musician. Don't do that. You know, play music, that's fine, but have a job. You know, everyone told me, not that you're not talented, Matt, but don't play music for a living. And I remember saying to myself, well, I'm just going to have to be poor my whole life. And I'm just going to have to live in an apartment. And, you know, at that time of my life, I'd never been in an apartment. I grew up in a suburb in California. Everybody I knew had houses, not necessarily fancy houses, but houses, you know. Still, I thought to myself, okay, I was thinking of like, you know, sitcoms, like I was going to be like in Good Times or something, you know, I was going to live in this little place and we weren't going to have any money and my children were going to be poor. But I figured, well, we'll love each other and I'll be happy and I'll do something I love and that'll have value to them. Honestly, this is how I thought about it when I was in junior high, as I planned for my musical career. So that's what happened for me.
Thank you.
And I took my vow of poverty.
Very important to do that.
Got that right.
Yeah, but he's not poor. He's not his no, but he's rich now. He's wealthy.
Oh yeah. Oh,
You know, you're on your 3rd house, 4th house, whatever, right?
Yeah, you see.
Things are okay.
Things are okay. So let's talk about Jazz Fest itself. We've been asking people we're interviewing about their favorite Jazz Fest foods. Tell the listeners, what's your favorite when you go out to Jazz Fest?
Man, there's so much great food that we could talk about. And so also a lot of that, my favorite food is, who am I eating it with? You know, it's like with my family, to one extent, it's like me and my boys eating the ribs and beans. That's not my favorite meal, but that's their favorite meal. And I love eating it with them, you know. But I also have to say that I really love being hungry. I love just finding the empty line. Walk up, choose something on the sign, order a small part of it. You know what I mean? Or there's usually 2 different sizes you never had before. Walk up, just get the small one and give it a try. Everything's good. It's all good. And then you don't have to wait in some big long line, you know? So that's also the mystery of Jazz Fest. Is part of what I love about it.
My favorite is the trout baquet from Little Dizzy's, right? It's that nice piece of trout. And I mean, there's butter all over it with some crab meat on top and some French bread. I love that a lot. I also like I like a fried soft shell crab. I like that. But you have to get it on the first couple of days when that grease is nice and clean.
Well, I'm getting hungry.
Yeah.
By
Before
the way, the trout is my favorite too. Go ahead, Nicole.
I was gonna say the trout is my favorite too. So
Oh, that's like Louis Armstrong being Matt and I's favorite thing. It's just the same thing. Matt, you got to try. If you go, Matt, you get that trout. It's in between the jazz tent and the blues tent, I believe.
The blues tent, yeah.
Somewhere over there. And when you get that, Matt, it'll be one of your favorites. You know,
I'm sure I'm going to stand in line for it. Yeah.
Before we say goodbye to you guys, and thank you again so much for your time. This has been so much fun. I just want to plug the foundation. We spent a lot of time talking about how great and meaningful the foundation has been to you, but just for anyone who is not aware of what the Threadhead Cultural Foundation has done, they have issued 141 grants to artists in 12 rounds of funding for a total of $535,000.
Whoa.
That was
Like
amazing.
that.
Wow.
Yeah, like that.
That's
And
amazing.
you know, and it's there's not an ounce of fat. There's not one person on salary. Every single dollar that gets donated goes into recording fees and mixing fees and pressing fees, every single penny. So there is no more direct way to support New Orleans music than the Threadhead Foundation.
Yeah. It's unprecedented. There's never been anything like this before. I can't imagine anything ever like this. And it's so friendly to the musicians. The Threadheads don't want control of the records. They just want to put the money up and let this culture flow. That's what it's all. That's really, I mean, that's the bottom line. Keep putting money into New Orleans, not even New Orleans culture, it's Louisiana now, I believe, right?
Mhm,
Yeah.
Into this culture we have in this wonderful area that just keeps it propelling. I mean, 141 records, man, that's amazing.
I mean, first they give you money to make a record, right? That you can start earning on. And then they throw a party that they hire you to come play at, and then they come buy your record at the party. It really
And
is,
then they become your good friends too.
it's really incredible. So the support is I've never seen anything like it anywhere else.
It's amazing.
And I've been
Truly
around.
amazing. Thank you, Threadheads. Y'all are truly amazing.
Thank you guys so much for letting us talk with you today. This has been really, really special. Thank you guys.
Keep doing it, Threadheads. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Matt, you ready? One more time. You ready?
Yep. All right. I'm listening. All right. Hello.
And you know, it's funny because actually on the bottom of it, it says property of the Recording Academy with the serial number on there. And you have to sign an agreement saying you won't sell it, you won't auction it, you won't pee on it. There's a few things you have to agree
Oh,
to.
I'm not supposed to do that? Oh.
You can pee in it. You can't pee on it.
I think maybe Kanye did that. So I mean, they don't say that, but I think that.
But you do get to keep these, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good.
I think
I don't
so.
know, maybe
Although
make
it's
a terrible record, they'll come take it away from us. You know. Yoink.
No, we were wrong. We won it back.
That's right.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you. Thank you,
Nicole.
Threadheads. We love y'all.
Yeah, thank
we
you.
love y'all.